So my fiancé, female, 24 years old, and I, male, 27 years old, got engaged in May and are currently planning for our wedding in August. It's worth mentioning that I'm the sole earner because my fiancé is still in university. I've saved up decent amount of money to afford the wedding. Thing is, her parents get involved in everything, from picking the engagement ring on my behalf, to giving opinions on where we should rent, and now my FMIL is constantly giving opinions on our wedding. FMIL would follow up on everything we do and make negative comments on things like the best man, the guest list, and food. She told my fiancé she didn't like who I picked to be my best man and wanted me replace him after a big argument, but I said no, though my fiancé said we should have just done it. Mother-in-law also wanted me to uninvite people I wanted at the wedding so she could add more guests on her side of family. I said no to that also. Now the current or biggest conflict between us. Mother-in-law called saying she didn't like the venue we picked, which is in our hometown. She wanted me to reconsider, but I said no since my fiancé liked it too. But my fiancé came to me yesterday to show me a venue her mom picked and already paid for, saying, since she paid for it then I should say yes, this time. I was in shock and angry because not only did she not consult us, but the venue she picked is 3 towns away where my brother-in-law lives. I immediately thought about my disabled parents who cannot travel this distance for health reasons. Besides that, most of my family won't attend because of distance. I said absolutely not, agreeing on this venue. My fiancé said she disagreed with me and I had no right to complain because her mom and dad paid a lot of money for this venue as wedding gift and we should accept it. I calmly explained why I refused, and she kept saying I'm refusing on purpose because I hate her mom and am playing cat and mouse with her. I bluntly said her mom is indeed making this a game and told my fiancé she's either with me or against on this issue. She either backs me up or there won't be any more wedding planning. She got upset and started crying, asking what she's going to tell her mom and why I was making her choose between me and her parents, but I just feel like she's refusing to see why I don't want this specific venue. So what if her brother lives there? I have never been to that town, so having the wedding just cause her mom paid for the venue is not okay. We haven't talked ever since that argument. My friend called me ungrateful fool for turning away a free wedding venue over distance, but I can't help but feel FMIL did it purposely. Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin, though when he made more I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he's started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K /year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity /equity /inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen and we haven't really talked since yesterday. My brother and I do not get on. When we were younger, he'd go out of his way to make my life a living hell. To my parents' credit, they did tell him off for it when they caught him, but they both worked long hours and didn't have the energy to deal with our arguments. This continued into adulthood. He was salty that he failed his college course the first time around. There was a bad argument in our family a while ago, and it all started because I refused to decorate my brother's living room. I won't go into too much detail, but he wanted a pretty hefty discount. I said no, and he threw a tantrum. Instead of being a grown-up and talking to me, he decided to hook up with my toxic ex-girlfriend and the mother of my child. I can't go into a lot of detail about what she was like, but she was not a nice person. She never really bonded with our son when he was born, and I was left to do everything by myself. She eventually walked out on us and refused to have any contact with our son. She'll post on Facebook now and then about her beautiful baby boy to get sympathy votes, but that's about it. I have been a single dad for almost 3 years now, and I absolutely adore my son, but it hurts to think that one day he might question why his mom didn't want anything to do with him. How am I supposed to explain that to him? Anyway, it bothered me when my brother told me they'd hooked up together. It hurt even more when he started dating her. It had taken me so long to get over what she did to me and my child, and now my own brother was bringing her back into my life. Yesterday we had a family video call. Parents are high risk and we're not taking any chances. When my brother decided to announce that he and my ex were expecting, I just froze. I didn't know what to do or think. I could feel myself starting to cry a little bit, and it got a bit harder to breathe. Eventually, I decided to just congratulate them and then made up some lie about needing to put my son down for a nap and left. I received a bunch of messages from my brother and his GF telling me that I stole their thunder. After I left, my parents and some other family members started worrying if I was okay, and not really focusing on their news. My uncle told me that I should have just been a man and stuck it out instead of making excuses to get out of it. After all, it was expected that our kids would be raised around each other. I feel like maybe I shouldn't have left the call, but at the same time it would have been worse if I'd stayed and had a full-blown panic attack in front of everyone. Some of the family members are split and have argued that I won't be able to avoid my brother and his family forever, but others believe I was in the right to leave that situation. I don't know what to think. My parents aren't happy, but they don't have the energy to deal with all the hassle my brother would cause. They actually cut him off for a little while when he started dating my ex, but he phoned them constantly and, again, can't go into much detail, but he said he'd do something not so good. They keep him at arm's length, but I have told them not to cut contact because of me. If they want to cut contact on their own accord, then that's fine, but I do not want to be the reason that they have to deal with his tantrums. The rest of the family, for the most part, weren't happy about it but accepted it, or pretended to, when they started getting a bit more serious. My uncle, who told me to be a man, thought it was funny. That's just the kind of person he is. Not for my sake, but for the sake of my son. I don't want to put him through all that. I own a small condo in Orlando. I bought it while working for the Mouse, and my friend Ben lived there with me. Ben's a cook and is rarely home. He has a large room that is accessible from outside and an attached bathroom that locks to the rest of the house. Well, I got a different job, got engaged to my partner, and moved a few hours away. We kept the condo as a place to stay when we visit the parks. And we agreed with Ben that he could continue living there as long as he paid all the utilities and maintained the place. Our friends use it too. They pay a bit for utilities, are told don't bother Ben, and clean before they leave. Between everyone who uses it, we've gotten stuff donated, so it's now a fully stocked vacation home. My immediate family and I have a bad history, but we mended. They've used the condo 3/4x a year. On Monday, Ben got woken up at 2 a.m. by hammering on the main door. My aunt and uncle, their kids, and their grandkids were all there waiting to be let in. I haven't spoken to these people in years after they decided I was the devil's spawn for being gay. They demanded that the caretaker give them the keys. Ben called me. I told him to give them my number, then shut and lock the door and not let them in. My aunt was insistent that my condo was actually owned by my family. It was the family vacation home. And it was against the law to not let them in. I told her no, it was mine, I own it and I let friends and family use it, but I choose who stays there. There was a lot of back and forth and some petty name calling. She said they were here for a week, where were they supposed to go, and I said I don't care. Meanwhile, my partner reported that Ben texted them saying my uncle was attempting to kick in the door. I said tell him to call the police. She hung up on me and Ben said they left. In the morning I got a phone call from my mom trying to convince me to let them stay. We had an argument during which she admitted that she didn't tell people that I owned the property, because she didn't want the rest of our family to know they were in contact with me again. I told her if that's how she wants our relationship to be, then she's no longer welcome. I checked in with Ben and he's okay. Today my aunt sent several texts asking to stay at the house because they hadn't accounted having to pay for a hotel, and they had planned to just buy groceries and use the kitchen. I told her no. She said they were about to be out on the street with their luggage. She called me cruel and heartless and that I was ruining Disney for the kids. That made me hesitate, probably because I worked for the mouse. I know that particular family line has very little money. Yet I find it hard to believe someone would plan a whole vacation without accounting extra funds for it. But the kids are really young. I'm so furious over the homophobia that it feels like a point of pride to deny them access.